Struggling single dad showed up for a janitor job. The female CEO asked if he'd marry her instead. What if Isabella Rossi's audacious marriage proposal was hiding a secret far deeper than any business deal? You've heard how a struggling single dad landed the CEO, but the most shocking twist is the real reason she chose him, a truth that was cleverly concealed all along. Don't miss out. Subscribe, like, and listen to the full story now to uncover the stunning revelation. The words hung in the air of the opulent penthouse office, as sharp and unreal as the Chicago skyline, glinting through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind the woman who had uttered them. Instead of the janitorial position, Mr. Vance, Isabella Rossi, CEO of Innovatech Solutions, repeated, her voice a low, unwavering baritone that belied the absurdity of her proposal. I want you to marry me. Ethan Vance, a man whose aspirations had shrunk from building dream homes to merely scrubbing their toilets, could only stare, his calloused hand instinctively tightening on the worn strap of his backpack, which contained not a resume, but a half-eaten apple and a dog-eared copy of the little engine that could for his 7-year-old daughter, Zoe, who was at that very moment probably transforming the plush waiting area into a landscape of paperclip creatures and stapler remover monsters. Ethan's mind reeled, a frantic Rolodex of confusion. Marriage? Had he heard correctly? He'd spent the last 3 weeks cycling through every emotion from grim determination to outright panic, all in pursuit of this janitorial job, any job that would keep a roof over Zoe's head and food on their table. He'd rehearsed answers to questions about his willingness to clean toilets, his experience with floor buffers, his reliability for early morning shifts. He had not, under any circumstances, prepared for a marriage proposal from a woman whose photograph regularly graced the covers of business magazines, a titan of the tech world. Isabella Rossi leaned back in her ergonomic throne, a picture of cool, calculated composure. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon, her tailored suit the color of a stormy sky, her eyes sharp and discerning as they assessed him. There wasn't a hint of jest in her expression, no playful glint that might suggest this was some bizarre executive stress test. She looked as serious as if she were proposing a billion-dollar merger. I beg your pardon? Ethan stammered, the words feeling thick and clumsy in his mouth. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, unnerving silence of the vast office. He glanced towards the closed mahogany door, a desperate, fleeting thought of escape flickering through his mind. What was happening here? Was this a prank? A mistake? Had he stumbled into the wrong office, the wrong reality? The janitorial position pays $18 an hour, Mr. Vance. Standard benefits. My other offer is considerably more generous and comes with a unique set of responsibilities. Her gaze flickered for a microsecond to a small, framed photo on her otherwise uncluttered desk, a photo Ethan couldn't quite make out from his distance. He swallowed, trying to regain some semblance of control. MS. Rossi, I appreciate you taking the time to meet me, but I think there might be some misunderstanding. I'm here for the janitor job. I need that job. The desperation in his own voice was a raw, exposed nerve. I understand your needs, Mr. Vance, Isabella said, her tone softening almost imperceptibly. And I believe what I'm proposing could meet them, and then some. Think of it as a contractual partnership. Before Ethan could formulate another bewildered question, the intercom on her desk chirped. MS. Rossi, your father's on line 1. He says it's urgent. Isabella's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Thank you, Claire. Tell him I'll call him back. She turned her attention back to Ethan, the moment of interruption passing like a ripple on a still pond. We can discuss the details, of course. but I assure you, my offer is genuine. Ethan Vance was a man adrift, and Isabella Rossi had just thrown him not a life raft, but an anchor made of solid gold, attached to a very strange, very deep sea. The question was, would it save him or pull him under into depths he couldn't even imagine? And what about Zoe, his bright, innocent Zoe, waiting just outside, oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred in her father's already precarious world? Just 6 years ago, Ethan Vance had been on top of the world, or at least his small, carefully constructed corner of it. He and his wife, Sarah, had poured their savings and souls into Vance Homes, a custom home-building business that prided itself on quality craftsmanship and honest dealings. Ethan, with his keen eye for detail and a sturdy, reassuring presence, was the face of the company, the man who could translate dreams into blueprints and blueprints into beautiful, sturdy houses. Sarah, an architect with a flair for innovative design, was his partner in every sense of the word. Their daughter, Zoe, a whirlwind of sunshine and laughter, was the joyous center of their universe. They had a comfortable home in a quiet Chicago suburb, a future that looked as solid as the foundations Ethan poured. Then came the storm, not a meteorological one, but a convergence of tragedies that ripped through their lives with brutal efficiency. It started with the accident, a distracted driver running a red light, a screech of tires, and a sickening crunch of metal. Sarah was killed instantly. Ethan woke up in a hospital bed with a shattered leg, a concussion, and a hole in his heart so vast it threatened to swallow him whole. The months that followed were a blur of grief, physical therapy, and the dawning, horrific realization that their world had irrevocably changed. His leg, though painstakingly repaired, would never be the same. The chronic pain and the pronounced limp made clambering over construction sites an agonizing impossibility. Vance Homes, already teetering from the economic downturn that hit the construction industry hard, couldn't survive without Ethan at the helm and Sarah's design genius. The medical bills mounted, savings dwindled, and the foreclosure notice on their home felt like the final, cruel blow. He'd sold his truck, then his tools, each sale a fresh stab of grief, a relinquishing of his old identity. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. Ethan, a man who had once built legacies, found himself struggling to find any work. His construction experience was now a liability in a saturated market, his physical limitations ruling out many manual labor jobs. He applied for everything: retail, delivery, handyman gigs. The rejections piled up, each one chipping away at his already fractured self-esteem. His only anchor in this storm was Zoe. Her resilience, her innocent capacity for joy, even in their reduced circumstances, was the lifeline he clung to. For her, he would do anything. For her, he would swallow his pride, mask his despair, and keep searching. The janitor position at Innovatech Solutions, a gleaming behemoth of a tech company in downtown Chicago, had been a long shot discovered on a job board late one night. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady, with benefits, something he desperately needed for Zoe. He'd polished his sparse resume, emphasizing his reliability and work ethic, conveniently omitting the part about once owning a multi-million-dollar company. The morning of the interview, his anxiety was a knot in his stomach. Mrs. Henderson, their elderly neighbor who usually watched Zoe after school, had come down with the flu. Childcare options on his non-existent budget were nil. So, with a heart full of apprehension, he'd brought Zoe with him. He dressed her in her neatest outfit, packed her a small bag with drawing supplies and a book, and coached her on being quiet and good. "Are you going to build computers now, Daddy?" Zoe had asked, her small hand tucked trustingly in his as they approached the towering Innovatech building. "No, sweet pea," he'd said, forcing a smile. "Daddy's going to help keep the building clean and tidy." Like a superhero cleaning up messes, she'd chirped, her imagination always ready to cast him in a heroic role. "Something like that," he'd murmured, the irony not lost on him. The Innovatech lobby was an intimidating expanse of glass, steel, and minimalist art. He'd expected to be directed to a basement office, to meet a facilities manager with a clipboard and a skeptical frown. Instead, after a brief, confused exchange at the main reception, a crisply dressed assistant had appeared and escorted him, much to his surprise, directly to the penthouse floor to the CEO's office. Zoe, bless her heart, had been impeccably behaved in the luxurious waiting area, immediately engrossed in her drawing, leaving Ethan to his mounting bewilderment. And then came the proposal. Marriage to Isabella Rossi. He stared at her, his mind still struggling to bridge the chasm between cleaning floors and exchanging vows. "MS. Rossi," he began, his voice hoarse. "I don't understand." "Why me? A janitor? You don't know anything about me." Isabella's expression remained unreadable. "I know you're a single father. I know you're willing to do what it takes for your daughter. I read your application. It was refreshingly honest for a janitorial position. And my head of security did a cursory background check when you were unexpectedly routed to my office for this interview slot. Former business owner, clean record, by all accounts a responsible man fallen on hard times." She paused. "And frankly, Mr. Vance, you're not what I expected for a janitor, which in this particular instance is an advantage." "An advantage for what?" Ethan pressed, a flicker of his old business acumen surfacing through the fog of confusion. "This contractual partnership, what does it entail? And why me specifically?" "What it entails," Isabella said, her gaze direct and unflinching, "is a temporary, mutually beneficial arrangement. You would provide me with a certain public image, a stable, family-oriented persona. In return, I would provide you and your daughter with complete financial security, a substantial settlement upon fulfillment of the contract, and a generous living stipend throughout its duration. Enough to ensure Zoe has everything she needs, college fund included." Ethan felt a wave of dizziness. College fund? Financial security? These were dreams he'd thought were long dead. But a sham marriage? What would that do to Zoe? To his own tattered integrity? And the janitor job, he asked, clinging to the one tangible thing in this surreal conversation. A ghost of a smile touched Isabella's lips. "Consider it yours if you still want it after our discussion, but I believe you'll find my other offer far more compelling." She leaned forward slightly. "The why me is more complex. Let's just say I have specific criteria, and you, Mr. Vance, unexpectedly fit them. I need someone grounded, someone who isn't part of my usual circle, someone who understands responsibility." Her eyes flickered towards the photo on her desk again. The intercom buzzed. "MS. Rossi, Mr. Thorne is here for your 10:30. Isabella's expression hardened. "Have him wait." She turned back to Ethan. "My schedule is tight. I need an answer, or at least an indication of your willingness to consider this, by the end of the day. My assistant, Claire, will give you a packet with more details and non-disclosure agreement first. Naturally, if you sign it, you'll receive the full proposal. If you're not interested, you can simply start your janitorial duties on Monday. No hard feelings." Ethan was speechless. He felt like he'd been dropped into a high-stakes poker game with rules he didn't understand. The inciting incident wasn't just a job offer. It was a life-altering, morally ambiguous proposition from one of the most powerful women in Chicago. His immediate goal was still to provide for Zoe, but the path to achieving that goal had just fractured into two wildly divergent possibilities: the humble, honest toil of a janitor, or the gilded cage of a contractual marriage. He took the offered NDA from Claire on his way out, his mind a whirlwind. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating. Ethan signed the NDA, curiosity and a desperate, gnawing hope that this insane offer might somehow be a lifeline outweighed his initial instinct to run. The proposal packet that followed was less a romantic overture and more like a corporate merger document. Thick, laden with clauses, and outlining a 2-year marriage agreement with Isabella Rossi. It detailed a staggering financial settlement upon amicable dissolution, a generous monthly allowance, a luxury apartment in her building, and full coverage of Zoe's educational and medical expenses. In return, Ethan was to present himself as her devoted fiancé and subsequently husband, attend certain social and corporate events, and maintain an impeccable public image. There were even clauses about minimal public displays of affection and mutual respect and discretion. It was bizarre, transactional, and terrifyingly tempting. He started the janitor job the following Monday. Part of him needed the normalcy, the simple, honest labor. The other part knew he was buying time, wrestling with Isabella's outrageous offer. He was assigned the evening shift, from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., a lonely trawl through deserted office landscapes. The Innovatech building was a marvel of modern architecture, a gleaming tower of innovation. And, as Ethan quickly discovered, a building with its own share of hidden problems. As a former home builder, he couldn't switch off his ingrained attention to detail. He noticed things others overlooked. A persistent rattle in the HVAC system on the 15th floor that signaled a failing bearing. The subtle sag in a ceiling tile in the West Wing corridor indicating a slow leak. The dangerously frayed wiring on an industrial vacuum cleaner in the janitorial closet. He started small, discreetly fixing what he could, tightening a loose fixture here, reporting a serious hazard there to his shift supervisor, a world-weary man named Sal who mostly shrugged and said, "If it ain't on fire, ain't a priority." Zoe, meanwhile, became an unwitting pawn in this strange game. With the evening shift, Ethan struggled with childcare. A couple of times, when his sitter canceled last minute, he had no choice but to bring Zoe with him for the first hour or two of his shift, setting her up with her coloring books and homework in Sal's small, cluttered office, praying no one important would notice. One evening, Isabella Rossi was working late. As Ethan cleaned the executive floor, Zoe, who had been quietly reading, wandered out in search of a restroom. She bumped, quite literally, into the CEO as Isabella exited her office. Instead of annoyance, Isabella looked down at the small, wide-eyed girl with an unreadable expression. "Well, hello there," Isabella said, her voice softer than Ethan had ever heard it. "You must be Zoe." Zoe, never shy, nodded. "Are you Miss Izzy? Daddy talks about you. He says you have a very big office." Isabella actually smiled, a small, genuine curve of her lips. "He does he? And yes, I'm Isabella, but you can call me Izzy if you like." Ethan, emerging from an office with his cleaning cart, froze, expecting a reprimand. Instead, he found Isabella kneeling, talking to Zoe about the drawing of a unicorn Zoe clutched in her hand. For 10 minutes, the high-powered CEO and the janitor's daughter discussed the optimal glitter-to-glue ratio for unicorn manies. When Isabella finally stood, she met Ethan's apprehensive gaze. "She's a delightful child, Mr. Vance." There was a strange wistfulness in her eyes. The encounters, though infrequent, continued. Isabella would sometimes find excuses to be on the executive floor when Ethan was cleaning, asking him pointed questions that seemed to stray beyond janitorial concerns. Mr. Vance, that flickering light in the main conference room, any idea what might be causing it? Maintenance has looked at it 3 times. Ethan, unable to help himself, would offer a diagnosis. It's likely the ballast, MS. Rossi, they probably just keep changing the bulb. It needs a new fixture or at least a new ballast. She'd nod slowly. Interesting. The marriage proposal was the elephant in every room they shared. Ethan was still deeply conflicted. The money would change their lives. Zoe could have the best schools, health care, a secure future he could currently only dream of. But the deceit felt like a betrayal of everything he believed in. He imagined Sarah looking down, her disappointment a heavy weight. Isabella, however, was persistent. She called her office for updates on his janitorial work, which invariably turned into discussions about the agreement. She wasn't trying to romance him. She was all business. Mr. Vance, the deadline for the Starlight Fund pitch is approaching. My family situation is becoming a point of contention with certain board members and, more importantly, with Conrad Abernathy, the fund's director. He's a traditionalist. He values stability. So that was it. A business deal. A very big one, apparently. Ethan felt a strange mix of relief and a new kind of unease. He was a pawn in a much larger game than he'd imagined. Complications arose from other quarters. Whispers started circulating among the late-shift office workers and security guards. Why was the new janitor getting FaceTime with the CEO? Sal, his supervisor, warned him, "Keep your head down, Vance. This ain't the kind of place where the folks on top mix with the folks on the bottom unless they want something." One of Isabella's executive vice presidents, a slick, ambitious man named Marcus Thorne, began to eye Ethan with open suspicion. Thorne, Ethan gathered from office gossip, was Isabella's main rival on the board, a proponent of a more aggressive, ruthless business strategy. He'd corner Ethan one evening by the elevators, getting pretty chummy with MS. "Rossi, aren't we, Vance? Interesting career trajectory for a janitor." Thorne's smile was all teeth. The pressure mounted. Bills were piling up. Zoe needed new shoes. The apartment felt smaller and gloomier every day. He saw the worry in Zoe's eyes when he tucked her in, the unspoken questions about why Daddy was always so tired and sad. Then came the incident with the faulty wiring. Ethan had reported the frayed cord on the industrial vacuum multiple times. Solid shrugged it off. One night, a young cleaning crew member, a recent immigrant named Maria, got a nasty shock from it. She wasn't seriously injured, but she was terrified and her hand was burned. Ethan, furious, bypassed Sal and sent a detailed email to building management and, on a desperate whim, CC'd Isabella Rossi, outlining the hazard in the previous ignored warnings. The next day, Isabella summoned him, not to fire him, but to thank him. "Your report was illuminating, Mr. Vance. It seems there are several systemic issues with our facilities management that I was unaware of." She looked at him thoughtfully. "You have a good eye for these things, beyond just cleaning." She then brought up the marriage contract again, this time with a new urgency. "The Abernathy Gala is in 3 weeks. It's the perfect opportunity to present a united front. Ethan, this isn't just about my position anymore. The Starlight Fund investment would allow Innovatech to launch its new sustainable energy division, creating hundreds of jobs, good jobs, right here in Chicago. It's the ethical direction my father always envisioned for this company. Thorne is pushing for a different investor, a vulture fund that would strip Innovatech for parts and maximize short-term profit at the expense of our employees and our long-term vision. The stakes had just been raised exponentially. This wasn't just about his and Zoe's future anymore, or even Isabella's career. It was about the livelihoods of hundreds, the ethical soul of a company. He thought of Maria, the shock, the fear. He thought of his own lost business, the despair of unemployment. Zoe, during another brief visit to Sal's office while Ethan started his shift, had left a drawing on Isabella's unattended desk when she'd been exploring. Isabella had later admitted to Claire, her assistant, that she sometimes left her door slightly ajar, hoping Zoe might visit. It was a picture of Isabella, standing tall like a queen, but with a little speech bubble saying, "I'm a bit lonely." Below it, Zoe had drawn herself and Ethan holding Isabella's hands. When Isabella showed it to him later, her usual composure was fractured. "She's remarkably perceptive," Isabella had murmured, her voice thick with an emotion Ethan couldn't quite decipher. It was a small, innocent act, but chipped away another layer of Isabella's carefully constructed armor and another layer of Ethan's resistance. He was beginning to see the woman beneath the CEO, a woman who, despite her power and wealth, seemed to carry her own burdens, her own loneliness. The choice was becoming clearer and infinitely more complex. The weight of Isabella's revelation about the Starlight Fund and its potential impact settled heavily on Ethan. It was one thing to consider a sham marriage for personal gain, however desperate his circumstances. It was another entirely to become a linchpin in a plan that could affect so many lives, potentially for the better. He spent a sleepless night pacing his small apartment, the contract lying on his kitchen table like a silent, life-altering dare. Zoe coughed in her sleep from the other room, a small, dry sound that reminded him of the drafty windows and the ever-present worry about affording a doctor's visit if it turned into something worse. He thought about his old life, the pride he'd taken in building safe, secure homes. He thought about Sarah and what she would have wanted. She'd always been the brave one, the one who believed in fighting for what was right, even when it was hard. The next morning, Ethan requested another meeting with Isabella. This time, he didn't feel like a desperate job applicant or a bewildered janitor. He felt like a man with something to offer and something to lose. "I've considered your proposal, S. Rossi," he said, meeting her gaze directly across the expanse of her polished desk. Zoe was at school, giving him this rare moment of focused, adult conversation. "And I have some conditions." A flicker of surprise, then respect, crossed Isabella's face. "Go on, Mr. Vance." "Firstly," Ethan said, his voice steady, "Zoe. Her well-being, her privacy, her happiness are paramount. This arrangement must not harm her in any way. I need assurances, ironclad, about how she will be shielded from any negative fallout, especially when this contract ends." "Agreed," Isabella said without hesitation. "I've already had my legal team draft addendums regarding Zoe's protection and future. I wouldn't have it any other way." Secondly, Ethan continued the narrative. "If we do this, it needs to be as honest as a lie can be. I won't be portrayed as some gold-digging opportunist, and you won't be seen as someone exploiting a vulnerable man. We present this as two people who found an unexpected connection, supporting each other's goals." Isabella nodded slowly. "That aligns with the image we need to project to Mr. Abernathy. Mutual respect and partnership." Thirdly, Ethan said, taking a deep breath, "Innovatech. Those systemic issues, I mentioned the safety hazards, the deferred maintenance. If I want to be part of this, even temporarily, I can't stand by and watch people like Maria get hurt or the building itself decay from neglect. You said you were unaware. I can help you become aware." He slid a neatly typed, surprisingly comprehensive report across the desk. "This is an initial assessment of critical safety and maintenance issues in this building. Things Sal ignores, things your current facilities manager, whoever he is clearly missing. As a former builder, I know these things. Their liabilities, a mess. Rossi, moral and financial. Isabella picked up the report, her eyebrows arching as she scanned the first page. She read through it carefully, her expression growing more serious with each turned page. It detailed everything from overloaded circuits in the server rooms to insufficient emergency lighting in stairwells, potential ADA compliance violations, and the previously mentioned HVAC and leak issues, complete with estimated costs for immediate and long-term fixes. When she finally looked up, there was a new light in her eyes. "This is extensive, Mr. Vance, and deeply troubling. Why wasn't this brought to my attention by my facilities department?" "Perhaps," Ethan said carefully, "they thought you wouldn't care about such mundane matters. Or perhaps they don't have the expertise to see the bigger picture. These aren't just janitorial complaints. They're structural and systemic risks." Isabella was silent for a long moment, tapping a pen against his report. "You're right," she said finally. "This is unacceptable. And you, Mr. Vance, you're more than just a janitor, aren't you?" "I used to build houses," Ethan said quietly. "Good houses. Safe houses. The janitorial role is clearly beneath your capabilities," Isabella stated. "If you agree to my primary proposal, I also want to offer you a formal consultancy role, effective immediately. Head of a new special projects team for facility integrity and safety. You'll report directly to me. You'll have the authority and the budget to address every issue in this report and any others you find." Ethan was stunned. This was more than he could have hoped for. A real job, using his actual skills, making a tangible difference. It wasn't just about the money anymore, or even the abstract good of the Starlight Fund. It was about reclaiming a part of himself he thought he'd lost. "So," Isabella said, leaning back, "do we have an agreement, Mr. Ethan?" The use of his first name was a subtle shift, a crack in the formal wall between them. This was the turning point, the point of no return. He was no longer just reacting to her audacious offer. He was actively shaping its terms, becoming a partner, albeit an unconventional one. He thought of Zoe's cough, of Maria's burned hand, of the hundreds of jobs hanging in the balance, and of the unexpected chance to rebuild not just his life, but his sense of purpose. "Yes, Isabella," he said, the name feeling surprisingly natural on his tongue. "We have an agreement." A rare, almost dazzling smile broke across Isabella's face. "Good. Then we have a lot of work to do, and a gala to prepare for. Our engagement will be announced to the board tomorrow morning. Marcus Thorne is going to be displeased." Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. He was in, all in. He was no longer just Ethan Vance, struggling single dad and janitor. He was Ethan Vance, consultant to the CEO, future, fake, fiancé, and a man with a mission. He was moving from the shadows of the night shift into the bright, glaring spotlight of Isabella Rossi's world, and there was no looking back. The game had changed, and he was now a willing and crucial player. The announcement of Isabella Rossi's engagement to Ethan Vance sent shockwaves through Innovatech. To most, Ethan was a complete unknown, and the speed of it all fueled a whirlwind of gossip and speculation. Marcus Thorne, as predicted, was visibly furious, his polite congratulations to Isabella barely concealing a simmering resentment. He cornered Ethan in the executive lounge a few days later, his demeanor a thin veneer of civility over cold hostility. "Vance," Thorne said, swirling the ice in his drink. "Quite the Cinderella story. From pushing a broom to practically owning the castle. You're a fast worker, I'll give you that. I guess you could say things developed quickly," Ethan replied, keeping his tone even. He was learning to navigate these encounters, coached lightly by Isabella on maintaining a calm, confident front. Indeed, Thorne sneered. Some might say unnaturally quickly. Rest assured, many of us will be watching your performance with great interest. Ethan's new role as head of facility integrity and safety was, thankfully, a grounding force amidst the surrealism of his fake engagement. He threw himself into the work, conducting thorough inspections, prioritizing repairs, and meeting with department heads to understand their needs. His practical knowledge and no-nonsense approach earned him the grudging respect of the maintenance crews who had previously answered to a less engaged manager. Sal, his old janitorial supervisor, now looked at him with a mixture of awe and bewilderment. Never figured you for a suit, Vance, but you sure know your way around a leaky pipe. The engagement itself was a crash course in public deception. Isabella's PR team orchestrated a series of carefully managed appearances. There were a few select charity events, a carefully leaked photo of them sharing a chaste laugh over dinner at a high-end restaurant, and several meetings with key board members and, crucially, Conrad Abernathy of the Starlight Fund. Abernathy was an older gentleman, old school in his manners, with eyes that seemed to see more than one let on. He'd invited Ethan and Isabella for an informal brunch at his country club. "So, Ethan," Abernathy had said, his gaze direct, "Isabella tells me you have a background in construction. A man who builds things. I like that. Solid. Tangible." "Yes, sir," Ethan replied. "I believe in building things to last." He spoke of his former business, careful to frame its demise as a casualty of the recession and his wife's passing, rather than any personal failing. He spoke passionately about the importance of safe, well-maintained infrastructure, subtly weaving in the work he was now doing for Innovatech. Isabella watched him, a complex expression on her face. Later in the car, she said, "You were good today? You believe in what you're doing here, don't you? The safety work, I mean." "I do," Ethan said. "It matters." "It does," she agreed softly. "My father always said the foundation has to be strong, whether it's a building or a business." Living arrangements were another adjustment. Isabella's proposal packet had included the use of a lavish apartment in her own building, a few floors below her penthouse. Ethan and Zoe moved in. Zoe was thrilled with the space, the views, and the indoor pool. Ethan felt like he was living on a movie set. He and Isabella established careful boundaries for their cohabitation, mostly centered around Zoe. Isabella made a genuine effort with his daughter. She'd often join them for brief, informal dinners, bringing Zoe small, thoughtful gifts and advanced art set, a book on constellations after Zoe expressed an interest in the stars visible from her new bedroom window. Zoe, in her innocent way, started to bridge the gap between them. "Miss Izzy," she asked one evening, as Isabella helped her with a particularly tricky math problem, "why don't you smile more? You have a nice smile." Isabella, caught off guard, actually flushed. "Life is serious business, sometimes, Zoe." "Daddy says even serious business needs smiles," Zoe replied sagely. Ethan saw Isabella absorb this, a flicker of something vulnerable in her eyes before her usual composure returned. These small moments, these unscripted interactions, were building a connection that neither of them had anticipated. They found themselves talking late into the night, sometimes after Zoe was asleep, sharing stories of their pasts, their losses, their very different struggles. Ethan learned about the immense pressure Isabella had been under since her father's death, the constant battle to prove herself in a male-dominated industry, the loneliness of command. Isabella, in turn, saw the depth of Ethan's grief for Sarah, his quiet strength, and his unwavering devotion to Zoe. A grudging respect was blossoming into something warmer, more nuanced. But Marcus Thorne was not idle. He was actively trying to sabotage the Starlight Fund deal, subtly spreading rumors about Isabella's sudden and convenient engagement. He implied Ethan was a gold digger, a nobody Isabella had plucked from obscurity for reasons unknown, possibly nefarious. He knew Abernathy was a stickler for reputation and propriety. The pressure culminated a week before the final Starlight Fund Gala, where the investment decision was expected to be announced. Thorne, through a connection at a city newspaper, orchestrated a thinly veiled gossip piece. It didn't name names, but it painted a picture of a prominent female CEO and her mysterious new fiancé with a troubled financial past, hinting at a marriage of convenience designed to sway a conservative investor. The article mentioned Ethan's previous bankruptcy and the foreclosure on his home. When Ethan saw it, a cold dread washed over him. This was exactly what he had feared. He felt exposed, humiliated. "This is a disaster," he told Isabella, holding up the paper, his hand shaking slightly. "Abernathy will see this. Thorne is trying to paint me as a con man." Isabella's face was grim. "He's playing dirty. We knew he would." Ethan sank onto the plush sofa in her penthouse, his head in his hands. "Maybe this whole thing was a mistake. I'm out of my depth, Isabella. I'm putting you, Zoe, this whole deal at risk." This was his dark night of the soul. Was he strong enough for this? Was he selling his integrity for a paycheck, however large? He thought of backing out, of disappearing back into the anonymity of his old life, even if it meant financial ruin. "Maybe I should just go." Isabella sat beside him, her usual steely demeanor softened by concern. "Ethan, look at me." He slowly raised his head. "Thorne is doing this because he's scared. He knows we're close to securing the Starlight investment. He's trying to rattle us, to discredit us. We can't let him win. But what if he's right?" Ethan whispered. "What if this is all just a sham, and Abernathy sees through it?" "It started as an arrangement," Isabella said, her voice firm but gentle. "But what you're doing for this company, the safety initiatives, the way you've brought a sense of grounding to this place, to me that's not a sham, Ethan. Your character, your dedication to Zoe, that's real. That's what Abernathy needs to see. What I see." She hesitated. "And what Zoe draws, she sees it too." She gestured to a new drawing taped to her refrigerator. The three of them, this time not just holding hands, but in a group hug under a sky full of smiling stars. Her words, and the simple faith in Zoe's drawing, were a balm to his frayed nerves. He wasn't alone in this. They were a team of sorts. "So, what do we do?" he asked, a flicker of his earlier resolve returning. "We prepare," Isabella said, her eyes regaining their strategic glint. "We anticipate Thorne's next move. And at that gala, we show Abernathy and everyone else exactly who we are together." The final days leading up to the gala were a blur of preparations. Ethan worked with Isabella and her PR team to craft responses to potential provocations. He also finalized a major safety overhaul plan for Innovatech, a testament to his capabilities and his commitment. He knew Thorne would try something at the gala, some public confrontation. The stakes had never been higher. His and Zoe's future, Isabella's legacy, and the fate of Innovatech all hinged on this one night. The Innovatech Foundation Gala, ostensibly a fundraiser for STEM education, was really the stage for the Starlight Fund announcement. The ballroom shimmered with understated elegance, a sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. Ethan, in a tailored suit that felt both foreign and surprisingly comfortable, stood beside Isabella, a portrait of calm he didn't entirely feel. Zoe was safely tucked in with a trusted sitter, armed with a new sketchbook and the promise of a late-night ice cream debrief. Conrad Abernathy arrived, exuding an air of quiet authority. He greeted Isabella warmly and gave Ethan a firm handshake. "Ethan, good to see you. Heard you've been shaking things up in the facilities department. About time someone did." It was a small comment, but it bolstered Ethan's confidence. Abernathy was observant. As dinner concluded and Isabella prepared to give her keynote address, which would lead into the Starlight announcement, Marcus Thorne made his move. He didn't interrupt Isabella directly. He was more insidious. During a brief Q&A session that Abernathy himself was moderating with Isabella about Innovatech's future, Thorne smoothly took a microphone from an usher. "A fascinating vision, Isabella," Thorne began, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "And Mr. Abernathy, your interest in Innovatech speaks volumes. However, as a board member concerned with the long-term stability and integrity of this company, I feel compelled to ask about transparency, particularly regarding leadership." He turned his gaze to Ethan. "Mr. Vance, your rise within Innovatech and into MS. Rossi's personal life has been meteoric. Some might even say orchestrated. There are concerns, whispers that this engagement is less about heartfelt connection and more about strategic positioning to secure certain investments." He produced a small sheaf of papers. "I even have here financial records indicating Mr. Vance was facing significant personal bankruptcy just months before this providential engagement. One might wonder about motivations." A hush fell over the ballroom. All eyes were on Ethan and Isabella. This was it, the public ambush. Isabella's hand tightened on Ethan's arm almost imperceptibly. Before Isabella could unleash her famously sharp retort, Ethan stepped forward slightly, his heart pounding, but his voice surprisingly steady. "Mr. Thorne is correct about one thing," Ethan began, his gaze sweeping across the room before settling on Abernathy. "6 months ago, my life was very different. I was grieving my late wife, struggling to raise my daughter, and facing financial ruin after my construction business failed, a casualty of a tough economy and personal tragedy." He spoke with a raw honesty that cut through the tension. "Yes, I was desperate. I applied for a janitor position here at Innovatech because I needed to provide for my little girl." He paused, letting his words sink in. What Mr. Thorne perhaps doesn't understand, or chooses to ignore, is that desperation doesn't negate integrity. When MS. Rossi and I met, it was unconventional, I'll admit. She saw something in me beyond my circumstances, a work ethic, a background in building things, an eye for problems that needed fixing. She offered me a chance, not just personally, but professionally, to use my skills to make Innovatech safer, better. He looked directly at Isabella, a genuine warmth in his eyes. Our personal relationship developed from that foundation of mutual respect. It wasn't planned, not in the way Mr. Thorne imagines, but it's real. What we're building both within this company and together is based on shared values, on wanting to create something lasting and positive. He then addressed Abernathy. "Sir, I understand your need for assurance. All I can offer is my truth. I love my daughter. I am committed to my work here, and I have come to deeply respect and care for Isabella. If that's not enough, then so be it." Isabella stepped to his side, her voice clear and strong. What Ethan says is true. His honesty, his character, his dedication to fixing what's broken, whether it's a faulty electrical system or a cynical corporate culture, is precisely why he's invaluable to me and to Innovatech. The Starlight Fund represents an ethical, sustainable future. That's a future built on integrity, not on manipulations like Mr. Thorne's. Just then, as if on cue, a waiter delivered a small, folded note to Mr. Abernathy. He read it, a slight smile playing on his lips. He looked up, his eyes twinkling. Well, this is unexpected. It seems a certain young lady named Zoe, who I had the pleasure of meeting briefly last week, asked her sitter to pass this along. It's a drawing. He held it up. It was a simple, childlike drawing of 3 stick figures. One tall, Isabella, one medium, Ethan, and one small, Zoe, all holding hands under a large, smiling sun labeled Team Innovatech. Below it, Zoe had printed, "They help people." Abernathy cleared his throat. "Mr. Thorne, true stability isn't about pristine financial records or perfectly orchestrated appearances. It's about character. It's about people who, even when faced with adversity, choose to build, to care, to act with integrity." He looked at Ethan and Isabella. "I've seen enough. Innovatech, under your joint leadership, MS. Rossi, and with Mr. Vance's evident character, is exactly the kind of investment the Starlight Fund champions." He turned to the audience. "I am thrilled to announce our partnership." A wave of applause erupted. Thorne stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He was finished. The genuine honesty of Ethan and Isabella, amplified by the innocent wisdom of a child's drawing, had triumphed over his cynical machinations. The aftermath of the gala was a whirlwind of congratulations and relief. Marcus Thorne, thoroughly discredited, tendered his resignation the following morning. Conrad Abernathy, true to his word, finalized the Starlight Fund investment, securing Innovatech's ambitious sustainable energy division and safeguarding hundreds of jobs. A few days later, Ethan and Isabella sat in her penthouse, the city lights twinkling below. The signed Starlight contract lay on the coffee table between them. The marriage agreement was also there, its purpose now fulfilled. "So," Ethan said quietly, "I guess this is where the contract ends." Isabella looked at him, her expression soft. "Technically, yes. The deal is done. We can dissolve the engagement. You're free to go, with the settlement we agreed upon, of course." An awkward silence hung in the air. The thought of leaving, of returning to a life without this strange, challenging, yet increasingly meaningful partnership, felt wrong. "Do you want me to go?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Isabella met his gaze, her eyes searching his. "No, Ethan, I don't." She took a breath. This whole thing started as a means to an end, but somewhere along the way it became something more. For me, at least. "For me, too," Ethan admitted, a slow smile spreading across his face. "It seems my contractual partnership duties might need to be renegotiated for a longer term." Isabella's answering smile was radiant. "I think that can be arranged. Perhaps without the corporate lawyers this time." Ethan's role at Innovatech was solidified. He was no longer just a consultant. Isabella formally promoted him to Vice President of Operations and Safety, giving him full authority to overhaul the company's infrastructure and implement long-term preventative maintenance programs. He was respected, his expertise valued. He was building again, not houses, but a safer, more efficient environment for thousands of people. Their personal relationship evolved organically, without the pressure of a contract or public expectation. They took things slowly, building on the genuine affection and respect that had grown between them. They went on actual dates, explored the city with Zoe, and discovered a shared love for quiet evenings, good books, and surprisingly, cheesy B-movies. Zoe, overjoyed, simply accepted Isabella as a permanent, loving fixture in their lives. "I knew Miss Izzy needed more smiles," she declared one evening, as the 3 of them shared a pizza, Isabella laughing freely at one of Ethan's dad jokes. Ethan Vance, the struggling single dad who had shown up for a janitor job, found himself in a life he could never have imagined. He had financial security, a fulfilling career where he made a tangible difference, and a partner who challenged, respected, and loved him. Isabella Rossi, the powerful CEO who had once viewed relationships as strategic alliances, found a partner who grounded her, cherished her, and showed her the strength in vulnerability. Their new normal wasn't a fairy tale, but something far more real and rewarding. It was built on honesty, mutual support, and the understanding that sometimes the most unexpected proposals can lead to the most profound partnerships. They were a team, in every sense of the word, building a future, one day, one project, one shared smile at a time. And somewhere, Sarah was smiling too, knowing her husband and daughter had found their way to a new, bright horizon.